Amidst everything going on in the transfer portal, there is one key part of BYU's game plan that has not been addressed so far as I'm aware. I'm not certain why.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, coming up on today's show, I'm going to address one key hole that I feel like BYU's transfer portal game plan has failed to address. We'll also talk about the potential of a new guard coming to BYU. He's planning on making a visit this week, and could he be the answer to the backup point guard position for the Cougars? And then we'll finish up today's show once again on the transfer portal front, albeit with football and Cale Breslin announcing his departure from BYU, and we'll dig into what might be going on there. All right, so I said in the open, there is one part of BYU's transfer portal game plan that I'm just not certain that they've addressed adequately, at least from my perspective, and that is, where have all the big men gone? Now, it's not that BYU has a dearth of big men right now. They obviously have Keba Keita coming back, and he's just an absolute freak. He played so well last year that it was a revelation that he was, quite frankly, as good as he was. Obviously, Fousseyni Traore was the backup, but Fous has now moved on. So there is a question mark about who the backup five is going to be in BYU's offense. Could Mihailo Boskovic fill that role? Maybe so, but I think any of us, including yours truly, who watched Bosco play this past year, realize he's more of a stretch four than he is a true five. Could he play the five in a five-out alignment? Absolutely, but I still think BYU needs a rim-rolling big man. So that brings me to two possible explanations, and allow me to elaborate on why the two exist out there. So number one, Xavion Staton. Now, he's a top 50 type prospect coming to BYU, is considered to be a four-star prospect, legit 7-footer. There have been ranges of his height going from 6'11 all the way to 7'2. Regardless, he's got the height. You can't teach height in college basketball. It's one of the axioms that I abide by. You cannot teach height. It's just simple fact of life. It's the genetic lottery. He is a legit 7-footer, and I believe BYU must think at this juncture that he's able to come in and fill that backup role adequately, or they just have their heads buried in the sand and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. I think that Xavion Staton is going to be a very, very capable big man in time, but there's the key operative words, in time. Based on what I understand, what I have seen in the highlights I've seen from him, is that yes, he is a shot blocking big man, but I just don't see the skill set that screams to me that he's a day one backup big at the power four level. So that means that he'll need some development. Could he come along maybe at midseason? He emerges by the time Big 12 play tips off and he becomes a force? Maybe so, but I just don't see Xavion Staton being the answer right away for BYU. Let me reiterate. That's not because I don't think Xavion Staton can play. I just don't think he has the overall skill set that BYU wants in their big men, at least at this juncture. Chris Burgess is going to make his paycheck, making sure that Xavion is up to speed, like I said, in time. But I think it's going to take some time for him to get up to speed. That brings me to my second point about why I wonder why BYU is doing in the transfer portal by not recruiting these big men. The second part is BYU looking overseas? It's been a key part of BYU's game plan since Kevin Young arrived, is to use the overseas ranks to find prospects out there for them to recruit. None bigger than obviously Yegor Demon, who's now headed to the NBA draft. And Yegor proved to be everything BYU could have hoped for and more. Came in from Real Madrid, took a starting role, and really did a really bang-up job for a true freshman playing his first year in college basketball, especially at the Power 4 level. It was a rough and tumble Big 12 season, and he got beat up a lot, but he also delivered some blows himself, and I think he emerged on the other side as a more battle-hardened, tested player that is going to make quite a bit of money at the NBA level. So best of luck to Yegor Demon. I think based on the way and you guys know this, who listen to this podcast, I pay way too close of attention to the transfer portal. It's part of my job as a reporter covering BYU. I got to pay closer attention than almost anybody out there to stay on top of the game. BYU hasn't put a lot of eggs in the basket of finding a big man in the transfer portal. And I've been kind of wondering, a number of you have been wondering as well, what are they doing? Because I think that they do need to find a capable backup to a guy like Keba Keita, because simply put, if you don't have anybody behind him, a team will put him in foul trouble and suddenly that you're in trouble. I don't think that Kevin Young doesn't know this. That's why it brings me to my point that if Xavion Staton is not the answer, and maybe he is, and we're just all being a little too, we're scrutinizing him a little too closely. The second part of the question is, if they're not going to use the transfer portal to address the big man issue, it's probably because they're looking overseas. Now, you're probably saying, well, Jake, who are they looking at? Beats me. I know that's not what you come here for, but here's the deal. I think BYU has got a network of coaches, obviously inside the BYU the basketball offices. They also have a network that literally extends worldwide. We just saw that Will Voigt is going to be the Netherlands U18 coach in a tournament this summer. That's really cool to see that, because he's going to extend kind of his reach and his network as a coach literally everywhere that they play in that tournament. I love the fact that BYU has the capability of looking worldwide. Just look at last year's recruiting class. Kadeem Mboop, who's coming into BYU, is a guy from the NBA Africa Academy over there on the subcontinent of Africa. And it's really cool to see that literally the reach for BYU going worldwide. So that's why I am hopeful that if BYU is going to address this big man issue, and I believe they absolutely need to, they're going to look at somebody maybe from the European ranks, maybe coming over from Africa. Heck, they could go even to South America and find somebody that way. I've got faith that Kevin Young is not dumb, because he has proven that time and time again that he is, in fact, quite the opposite dumb. He's absolutely downright genius. I think they understand they need to find a big man, but if I'm kind of ticking off the boxes, okay, they're not using the transfer portal, Xavion Staton's not ready to go, where else can they go to find that talent? And maybe, just maybe, a guy does emerge in the transfer portal, and maybe BYU has been talking to somebody who's just not publicizing it with regards to being a big man. But there's been little to no news on that front, which leads me to think that BYU may be looking globally to find that answer. And I don't blame him one bit. The world of basketball has gotten infinitely bigger and bigger as the years have gone on. It's literally a worldwide game. There are kids playing it every corner of this planet. And if you can find a guy or two who you feel like are capable of coming in and contributing at a high level, who am I to argue with you? Because the track record already for Kevin Young and company suggests that they know what they're doing out there. Well, more to the evidence of what BYU knows what they're doing is what we're going to talk about next. Have they identified potentially their backup point guard, potentially a two guard as well, to play behind Rob Wright, who we fully expect to sign and be announced at any point now for BYU? Have they identified his running mate in the BYU backcourt? Who in the heck is a guy by the name of Martin Somerville? What does he offer to BYU? We're digging into that next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wonder, hey, where in the heck did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where our friends at Monarch Money come into the picture. They are your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, tracking all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. Stop just managing your money and actually build wealth along the way. All of us want to be smarter with our money. I can tell you I do as well. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track that spending, and even plan long-term goals to help you be a little better off in the long run. So take control of your finances today and do it with our friends over at Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. You heard that right. monarchmoney.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Once again, started today at monarchmoney.com. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Post District. Post District is home to 4 of Salt Lake's newest and most stylish apartment buildings: the Register, Post House North, Post House South, and 801 Flats. Each residence offers its own unique take on luxury urban living with features such as floor-to-ceiling windows, kitchen islands, waterfall kitchen islands, I should say, vaulted ceiling, spacious patios, and walk-in closets, including premium amenities in the community, including the city's largest residential gym, a year-round pool, golf simulator, massive TV wall for sports watching parties. Imagine watching the Masters on that yesterday as Rory McIlroy won the career Grand Slam. It's an incredible thing to have in your back pocket, and it include more than just that. It's all anchored by a one-of-a-kind community, and the best part is you step outside that community and you find yourself immersed in Salt Lake's hottest dining and nightlife scene, including award-winning spots like Urban Hill, Level Crossing, Sunday's Best, Mencho Ramen, and a bevy more opportunities for you guys. So whether you're looking for a studio, 1, 2, or 3 bedroom apartment, or even a penthouse, to find your perfect home today, visit liveatpost.com or call 801-590-6247. Mention this ad when Locked On Cougars to get an exclusive incentive from our friends over at Post District. Once again, go to liveatpost.com or call them today at 801-590-6247. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing well on this Monday. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. All right, so BYU is doing work in the transfer portal. We've already acknowledged that. We talked about the fact that I have questions marks about what they're doing with the big men, but there is no question that they have been very meticulous in identifying guards that they are interested in the transfer portal. Obviously, Robert Wright III, by the time you listen to this podcast, maybe his signing is official, but nothing I have heard / seen indicates anything is wrong with him ultimately landing at BYU. Just a matter of, I think, getting pen to paper as it were, and then he'll be locked in. But that brings us to the backup to Robert Wright III as BYU's point guard. And could that be UMass Lowell transfer Martin Somerville? He's planning on taking a visit to BYU beginning today through tomorrow, and then he'll be visiting Florida State tomorrow and Wednesday, according to 24/7 Sports. Why is BYU interested in America East Rookie of the Year? Well, here's the reason why. We've talked about this in the past on the podcast. He averaged 13.6 points, 2.9 rebounds, and 3.7 assists this past year, all the while shooting 40.5% from 3. There you have it, folks. He makes threes in bunches. He shoots at a pretty high level. The best part, he's 6'3", and he has got time on his side. The fact that he shot 75 out of 185, nearly 6 attempts per game, that fits exactly what BYU wants from their guard play. They want guys who are unafraid of putting it up when given the opportunity to do so. And as I mentioned, if you can make better than 40% of those, you absolutely will take that. And the other thing about it is he also played heavy minutes as well, 31.6 minutes and over 35 minutes in conference play. So the nice part is he's battle-tested. He's proven. Now, the America East Conference and the Big 12 are 2 very different levels. We all know that. But still, he has proven himself at the collegiate level, and that's why I think BYU is taking a swing on this young man. They believe that they can bring him in, and with some additional fine-tuning, some extra seasoning, he can emerge on the other side potentially as a star player for BYU. I think that Robert Wright III is coming to BYU. The whole thought he's going to increase his stock, and at some point in the relatively near future, he's going to take the leap to the professional ranks. Well, Martin Somerville could come in thinking, okay, if I play second fiddle or alongside Robert Wright III, I'm going to have extra spotlight cast on me. Same thing with what A.J. DeBonsa will bring to BYU. If you did not see what he did at the Nike Hoop Summit over the weekend, folks, we are going to be absolutely blessed to watch A.J. DeBonsa play basketball in Provo, Utah. He was absolutely incredible. 24 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals. Anybody who tells you that A.J. DeBonsa is a one-trick pony is straight up lying to your face. And that skill set that A.J. brings to the table is why guys like Martin Somerville should be interested in playing for the BYU Cougars. I've said it once, I'll say it again. There's going to be a massive spotlight cast upon BYU because of A.J. DeBonsa. Guys like Robert Wright III realize it, and that's why they're coming to BYU, because they can be seen more readily. And it's not to say that Robert Wright III was in a bad spot. He's playing at Baylor. Scott Drew has got a nationally renowned program down there in Waco, but Robert Wright III wants a bigger role. He wants to play alongside players who he feels like, at least in his mind, fit his skill set better. And that's what A.J. DeBonsa, Richie Saunders, Keba Keita, on down the list, all offer. That's why I think a guy like Martin Somerville is coming to BYU to take a look. Doesn't even include the conversation we haven't had on this podcast because it came over the weekend that Tanner Toolson, the former BYU guard turned UVU Wolverine, was on campus for BYU this past week. Now, Tanner, I'm looking at him as more of a Trevin Knell or a Dawson Baker type guy where he's a second string scoring forward who comes in off the bench and offers premier shooting because he's turned into a really, really lethal three-point shooter. Noticing a trend that BYU wants from their role players? Oh, yes. They want guys to shoot the three at a high level. We talked about Makai Mason last week. We've talked about guys like Robert Wright. Now, Robert Wright doesn't shoot 40%, but his ability to command an offense, get to the rim with impunity, that separates the fact that his shooting numbers may not be the level these other guys are. But if you want to play for BYU as a guard on the wing, you have to be able to shoot the three, and it helps if you're shooting at 40+%. That's why I think BYU is doing a really bang-up job at identifying players, specific players that they're interested in. Tanner Toolson already played at BYU. He knows what it's all about. He's been playing literally 10 minutes up the road at UVU. He's a BYU lifer. His dad, Andy, his cousin, Jake, his brother, Connor. There's another cousin I remember played for UVU. Was it Rylan? I remember who it was. But the thing is, the Toolson name is all over BYU. His dad coached at BYU. So Tanner would be a really, really nice addition for BYU, but he has 2 years on his side, obviously, to come in and make an impact maybe over 2 more years. But a guy like Martin Somerville here, he's got 3 years of eligibility. BYU's recruiting guys who have already proven themselves at the collegiate level, but also have time on their side, speaking of eligibility, so that way they're not being one and dones. Kevin Young, I think, understands that the whole adage of get old, stay old, yes, it's a really, really nice thing to have. He will always, so long as he's head coach at BYU, have one and done players. That's what AJ DeBonsa is. That's what Jaeger Demon was. They're going to be premier talents who come into BYU for a very short stint. But I think he understands that you have to supplement the top-rated, top-tier prospect with proven veterans alongside them who can obviously lend veteran expertise to a roster. That's what a Tanner Toolson can do. That's what a Makai Mason can do. And I think even with just one season playing at the America East level, I think that's what Martin Somerville can come in and provide for BYU, is a steady hand that understands the rigors and everything that it comes with playing in college basketball. That's what I like about how BYU's game plan has kind of been executed here in the transfer portal. It's not been throwing offers to everybody out there in the transfer portal. Yes, I'm sure they've offered their fair share, but more often than not, the stories that seem to come out about the guys BYU is interested in, the guys, more importantly, who are making visits to BYU, because if they're making a visit, they've got reciprocal interest. They wouldn't be making a visit to Provo, Utah, if they didn't have some interest in the Cougars. And that indicates to me that BYU, yes, they have done their homework on these players. They understand what they offer. They've looked at the advanced analytics. They've watched the film. They've run all the numbers. They believe these players can help them. And if Martin Somerville likes what he sees, who am I to say that BYU doesn't make him a good NIL offer and he decides that BYU is where he's going to play and take the leap up from the mid-major to the high-major Power 5 level in college basketball and see what he can do. I really like like I said, the way BYU's approaching this. They're being smart, they're being heady, and at the same time, they're not going out there and trying to just stuff the roster just with guys. They understand there's a calculated process to this of finding the right mix of players. Obviously, it's AJ DeBonsa, Richie Saunders. They're going to be the two lead dogs on this team. I think everybody who comes to BYU understands that the offense is going to be run through those two guys. Robert Wright III is a premier player in his own right, but I think he fully understands that this season may not be his time to shine, but in future seasons, it will be. That's the thing about this. There's a veteran nature that you need to get. The old adage, I said, the get old, stay old. Yeah, that balance of having premier talent alongside veteran rosters, that's a nice mix for BYU to utilize, and hopefully it plays out the way the BYU needs it to when it comes to building their roster on into the future. But sure looks like BYU is being very smart about that right now, and maybe Martin Somerville is a key cog that could be that combo guard, but more importantly, a key piece as a ball handler to help run this offense for the BYU Cougars. All right. We've talked a lot of basketball today. There's obviously transfer portal news in the college football world because, hey, transfer portal window opens once again later this week. We already know one guy who enrolled at BYU just a few months ago is already on his way out of the program. Why in the heck would Kel Breslin already be leaving BYU? We'll try and make heads and tails of that coming up next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site that's made for skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right, and more importantly, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support, industry-leading service, so always be talking to a real person. And for trade pros looking for that extra edge, their free Trademaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order as well. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn to do so. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your order. That's supplyhouse.com. Once again, using the promo code SH5 for 5% off your order. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, what are you waiting for? Join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Get the inside intel that you crave coming to your phone in the form of a text message. The best part is it's just $5 a month to be a part of the Insiders Group. And the kicker, 14 days. You get a 2-week free trial before you're charged a single penny. So join us today in the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Link is in the show notes below, whether you're watching this on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, or just reach out to us and we'll get you squared away. All right, before we go on today's show, the NCAA transfer portal for college basketball is well underway, but the spring portal window for college football opens up in 2 days. How much attrition can we expect for BYU football? I think you can expect some. We already got some news over the weekend that 3-star running back Kel Breslin at a Faith Lutheran High School in Nevada, he signed with BYU in December, enrolled in January, picked up an injury early on in spring ball that really precluded him from making much of an imprint in his first year with the program. And he announced over the weekend this, I'll quote it saying straight up, says, quote, "I appreciate everything BYU's done for me, especially the coaching staff and Coach Harvey Unga. After careful consideration with my family, I've decided to enter the NCAA transfer portal on April 16th. I have 4 years of eligibility left and look forward to the next chapter." Now, on its head, that's a really tough look, I think, for BYU to lose a guy who is so gung-ho about coming to BYU. Remember, we had him on this very podcast back in December ahead of him signing with BYU, and you can tell he was very excited to get to BYU, showed what he's capable of. He was enrolling early, graduating from high school early. He wanted to get going with his collegiate career. Well, it seems to have hit a bit of a snag, and he'll obviously be looking for a new program. But I think the simple fact of the matter is, if you're doing the math out there, I think this is a sign of the times. It's going to be happening across college football. No, the simple math is if the House settlement comes into effect, and it appears it's going to be without any provisions added, because there's been talk about maybe doing a smoothing process in terms of the roster cut down. But if it is implemented as stipulated currently, the simple fact of the matter is BYU is going to have to cut 20 or 30 guys from this year's roster. Now, those cut downs don't have to come technically until the first week of the football season this fall. So BYU can carry this right up to the end of August and then announce that, hey, we've got 20 or 30-ish guys who are no longer on the roster. Would that be a bad thing to do? Sure, it wouldn't be a great look, but here's the deal. Every other college football program out there is dealing with this same crunch. I know, because I've talked to people inside the BYU football program, is that every player either has or will be having an exit interview with the coaching staff leading up to Wednesday when the transfer portal opens. They're not being told to enter the transfer portal. Let me be very clear about that. But they are being told in explicit detail where they stand on the depth chart and where they will need to get if they hope to make a roster down the line with the BYU football program. Will there be some guys out there who are interested in sticking it out and saying, hey, I'm better than the guys in front of me. Just give me a chance to get out there in training camp and I'll prove that. Yes, there will always be those guys, and I expect there will be some of those guys who will do that come August and obviously be hoping to prove themselves over the 4 weeks and change BYU has in training camp ahead of their season opener. There are going to be other guys, And this is just my perception from Kel Breslin's side of things, who understand where they stand and say, you know what? Maybe I should get out now and find another opportunity for myself where I can maybe have a more prominent role. Simple math suggests just that with BYU football. Think about it. At the running back position alone right now, you have a starter that's entrenched. You have 2 or 3 key backups who are very much entrenched. And then you got a couple of young players alongside Kel Breslin that BYU is hoping to get a look at this upcoming season. Well, there's just way too many mouths to feed in terms of the overall reps that can be afforded to a guy like Kel Breslin at running back. And I think that he's realizing, hey, I may not get my chance to shine with BYU, but I'm going to go and look for my new opportunity elsewhere and do it right now, because I understand that the transfer portal is going to be opening on Wednesday. You're going to see a bunch of guys enter it, but it's not going to be as many as I think may have been forced to enter it had that cut down been forced upon these programs at the end of spring ball. BYU may tell some guys, yes, it's in your best interest to look elsewhere, but I don't think they're going to explicitly state, hey, you're hitting the transfer portal. Thanks for coming, but move along now. There's going to be programs out there. I'm not going to name names, but there are going to be some of the bigger programs out there and some of the bigger conferences who will do some of these players dirty. I'm just stating it like it is. You are going to see some players get told, hey, you're our guy. Everything's going to be good. They'll get into training camp, and then come the week of game 1. So that'll be August 25th-ish, for lack of a better date in my head, because I know the BYU plays August 31st. So yeah, the 25th, 26th, somewhere in there. That week, you're going to see hundreds, if not thousands of guys suddenly left without a plan. I think Kel Breslin is approaching this the right way. He understands that the writing is on the wall for him at BYU, as sad as it is to say, because it would have been nice to see what he could do. I watched his highlight reel. That's why I had him on this podcast. I was excited to see if his talent that he showed at the high school level was going to translate over to what BYU had in terms of what he could do for BYU. But simple math dictated that, hey, maybe it's in his best interest to look elsewhere. And I hope he lands on his feet. The nice part is, I think the transfer portal is going to open up, and there will be some programs, I think particularly at the G5 level, they'll be very happy that, hey, this kid couldn't hold on at the Power 5 level, and due to no fault of his own. That's the thing about this. I'm not saying anything about Kel Breslin not working out at BYU. In fact, far from it. I think he would have been just fine. I think the G5 ranks are thinking, all right, there are going to be guys simply due to math that are not going to be able to latch onto rosters at the Power 5 level. Let's scoop them up right now, bolster our lineups, and there will be a cascading effect. There will be guys at the G5 level that won't get a chance. They'll have to drop down to the FCS. There'll be guys who drop from the FCS to D2 and on down the ranks all the way. It's just it's unfortunate, because I know that coaches out there, Kalani Sitake's been very vocal about it. They would rather be able to have these guys stay on with their program, and maybe Judge Claudia Wilkin does amend the house settlement, that it will have that smoothing process where maybe it's 123 this year. 123 was the old roster. It drops to 120 this year, and then 115 the year after that, 110, and then finally gets to the 105, maybe over a 3 or 4 year period. That would allow these programs to not have to mass cut guys. But until that is added as a provision to this house settlement, I think the simple math dictates guys like Kel Breslin. It's unfortunate, but it's the simple part of what's happening in college sports right now. There's a roster crunch impending, and there are going to be odd guys out. And the sad part is Kel Breslin is as part of the collateral damage in all that. And it sucks for the program. It sucks for the players. And I sincerely hope that Kel lands on his feet, whether it's nearby or somewhere else in this country. I'll be rooting him on as a former BYU Cougar, even though it lasted all of about 4 months for him in Provo. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Locked On Cougars. As always, thank you for all y'all support. Y'all are the absolute best. It's good to be back in the saddle. I was Mr. Mom all weekend long, so it's good to be back talking BYU sports, but hope you all are doing well out there in Cougar Nation. Those of you out on the cruise, if you're watching this, you haven't met my parents, they're on the boat somewhere. So go and find Mama and Papa Hatch and say hi for me and tell them I love them. But as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And once again, thank you for being everydayers right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.